We're here with Cisco's Jonathan Davidson. We're talking about how networks are evolving, and Heavy Reading did a survey earlier this year where several qualified service providers, 82 qualified service providers, weighed in on what was sort of holding them back, or sort of some of the things that they were looking forward to in the network trends, that sort of thing. And one of the things that came back again and again was financial constraints. Right. So how is Cisco helping service providers sort of deal with these financial constraints?
Well, there's really two parts to it. The first of it is the CapEx side of things, obviously, is flat. And then on the OpEx side, our customers are spending 5 times the amount typically on average on OpEx versus on CapEx. So we really help them in 2 ways. One way we help them actually by helping them decrease the costs from a CapEx perspective by deploying new infrastructure and simplifying their architectures. But we also help them in growing their revenue streams with new services like SD-WAN to help them grow that top line. SD-WAN is expected to be a $10 billion market by 2023. And so we want to make sure we help our customers grab as much of that market as possible.
One way that operators are dealing with the traffic growth is to deploy 400 gig capable systems and optics. What are some of the applications or the specific areas where operators have said they're going to be using 400 gig?
Yeah, 400 gig will show up first in the core of the network. That's where capacity is always needed. We also see from a hyperscale perspective that many of them will be on the cutting edge inside of the data center. Yeah. For the traditional enterprise, you're going to see it 400 gig in the data center will take a bit longer. But starting with the core, moving into the aggregation portion of the service provider network, and then eventually it'll be a customer circuit. But that's going to take a bit of time.
Another key point that the survey brought out was around network automation and orchestration. So one of the things that service providers are keen to do is deploy new services quickly, and then also simplify the operations in the process. So how is Cisco helping out with that, or what are you hearing from customers when it comes to network automation and orchestration?
We're hearing exactly that. Our customers are looking to be able to dramatically reduce the mean time to remediation. So how long does it take to detect a failure? How long does it take to repair that failure? So utilizing new technologies, machine learning technologies, social operation technologies, the ability to automate everything that they do from a planning, design, implementing, operating, and you call that optimizing their infrastructure. So all of these new tool sets from an automation perspective help them lower that operational cost. I mentioned it's 5x the operational cost versus the CapEx cost. So we can help them lower that cost and provide a better customer experience. We've seen that their churn rates go down because their customer satisfaction goes up.
I just want to point out too that a key point that it's not just about adding capacity in the network. That used to be a thing that solved all the problems. Right. Just continue to add more bandwidth, more keep scaling it that way. It's like now we have to add the network intelligence as well. Yeah. Are you finding that operators are sort of saying this isn't an either-or thing, or do they look at one before they come to the other?
Well, there's going to be an insatiable need for bandwidth always. Right now, over 70% of the traffic on the internet is video. We see that going to over 80% over the next few years. So we have an insatiable desire for bandwidth, and it's going to go from standard HD to 4K to beyond. Right. Yeah. So this bandwidth growth is going to continue indefinitely. So you always have to add capacity, but you can do it definitely in a more intelligent way. And so SDN technologies at both the IP layer and the optical layer are definitely helping our customers squeeze the most efficiencies and optimize their networks and provide that intelligence. So it's not just the default add bandwidth, although we love it when they add bandwidth.
Right, of course. Along with automating the network and making the network more intelligent, service providers in the Heavy Reading survey indicated that they're also concerned about protecting the network. So there's yet another layer of things that the network infrastructure sort of has to account for. What is Cisco doing to help operators protect their network, and how are you helping them sort of continue to scale but do so safely?
Yeah, so it started off almost 20 years ago with DDoS protection, and that was the way to protect the infrastructure. And we've moved a long way since then, where we have critical infrastructure. The IP networks and the global service provider, the internet, is critical infrastructure. You can't conduct business. Consumers aren't happy if you don't have that working. And so you need to make sure that the infrastructure itself is trusted. And that trust needs to be rooted in hardware and then flow through the entire system. And what we've seen is that you need to be able to attest to each individual network element's trust, and you need to be able to do that from a third-party source. I'll give you an example. Most network elements today can run third-party agents.
Okay.
So someone can write an agent, you can write an agent, you can put it on a router or an optical piece of gear, but then you might leave and go to another company. Is that agent still running? Do you want it to still run? And how do you know if you have thousands and tens of thousands of elements,
Right.
where your agents are, whether they're operating the way you want them to do? So we need to look at trust in an entirely new way because of the fact that this is all critical infrastructure, and Cisco helps our customers with that.
To kind of wrap up here, we've got 400 gig. It's real. It's going into all parts of the network eventually, but first in the core of the network and service provider networks. We've got software automation that's helping not only control the network more efficiently, but also help cut down the time it takes to find failures and problems in the network. And then we've got pervasive security that sort of starts at the infrastructure layer and makes the network trustworthy throughout. How is Cisco sort of positioned to account for all of this happening at once?
Well, this is what we do. We are there's a reason why we were voted the #1 best place to work in the world, because we really help the customers help inspire our engineers to innovate, to help solve these world's greatest challenges. And it's exciting to get up and be able to work in an environment where we can work with the leading service providers across the entire globe, innovate, and solve the challenges you just called out.
Okay, great. Jonathan, thanks so much.
Thank you.